don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, sure. I have been working as a software engineer and cloud engineer, SRE engineer from the last 11 years. I have been working on, AWS, spinning up the resources of on GCP, and I worked on BigQuery, Bigtable. I worked on Kubernetes engine and also APG. Um, uh, and I also have worked on the resources such as cloud SDN and cloud watch cloud trail. My strength is more on AWS, and I worked pretty heavily on AWS. I can code in Python. I use PowerShell, Bash scripting. I can go on, but this is my expertise in a nutshell. I can say that.
Have you worked through projects in the past where the primary goal is to take an existing footprint in a private cloud or private data center to public cloud? Maybe talk about how you've approached those in the past, what work you did on that. I'm sure you went through it at Chase and Deutsche Bank. I'm sure they both have a lot of private clouds.
Yeah.
Maybe talk about one of those projects. What did you do? How did you break down the work? Maybe what was the strategy? Go through that a little bit.
To talk about one of the project which I worked mainly on Deutsche Bank or in Chase Bank. Like basically we actually had a private cloud as well as the public cloud in the cloud environments. I would like to say this include but not limited to adding customized cloud based environments which added inside their applications. So I was doing here like I am responsible for handling the custom cloud deployments across the systems, and I was also responsible for migrating from and the optimized to cloud. So if you look at my MSK clusters for the Datadog, I was also working on elastic search and loss at Kibana, and also with Splunk. And I also got the experience on the real side. So basically, we are able to work on the load balancers as well as as auto scaling group and trying to work on the Chase Bank. So we had a private cloud, and that which is actually helping us to do more on the cloud migration from on premise, so migrating on the on premise to the cloud. So we were doing the public in the private cloud inside the application. So we are responsible for working with the lift and shift migration, and I also responsible for migrating the business objectives for the migration with the inventory and planning on the on-premise infrastructure, including the hardware software applications. I was working on evaluating the application and dependencies and compatibility, and also identifying the data sensitivity. And here I was able to work the right migration strategies, um, and um, whereas in where we are able to rebuild and role play, and as well as lift and shift across multiple systems, and the link in the whereas the outlines of the timeline, working with the milestones and responsibilities like MSC clusters and ecosystems, where here we can for suppose like if we define this one the Datadog site, and so like we are so once the Datadog is created, we also work on setting up the migration strategies for the significant encounters inside that, working with containerization set, that data order, and trigger that one source code with the application capabilities with the analytics side. And then once the migration is done, we can then set up the significant integration side, and inside that, and release the training and support as part of the service. It triggers and deployments inside that, so we can release them on the service automation. And we also monitor and the capabilities for scalable and flexible environments. So to say like can we also do some SSA and make that we have got the build controllers inside the team foundation server. And also we can use Jenkins and Azure DevOps across the multiple systems as a part of data. So
Sure. Do you, so if I draw some lines here with our roles here at FIS, so it sounds like you did like a hybrid of a lot of different roles we have, right? We have our SRE role, which is kind of your production excellence role. That's your observability tools, your you know, I'll say disaster recovery, but more like automatic healing, things like that in production. And we have cloud engineers focused on the infrastructure, the cloud building blocks, the infrastructure code, the pipelines. And then we have DevOps engineers, which are focused more on the application deploys and pipelines. Like if you would say you have to fit into one of those buckets, what are you looking for in that next role? Are you looking for, like, you want to be the site reliability engineering person in production, or cloud engineering? Sounds like you're somewhere between those two.
Here I would say the application DevOps automation engineering. In this case, I can here I'm looking for something which is in the line with my long-term goals and responsibilities in the production side, and also the cloud engineering. Working with the triggered deployments, or also setting up at the end. And the by trying to work on the promotional call, like you say, like as already said, setting up with the CI/CD pipelines. Yeah, the way the production systems like without any problems. So here I would say I really wanted to go with that, and I would also want to work with one of the end-to-end orchestration, setting up the customized scripting in the pipeline, and also handling the long-term orchestration inside the production sites.
Sounds good. Chris, you can ask some questions if you want.
Sure. Just kind of based on what you were saying about the pipelines. Can you describe to me how you would go about setting up a pipeline within AWS to deploy a 3-tier web application? What approach would you take for setting up a pipeline within AWS, maybe from previous experience, or if you got a chance to do that in the future, and how would you ensure security around that pipeline as well?
Yeah. Basically, for this, 3-tier web app, I would say, that first of all, I actually look for, at the requirement specifications and documentation. So from that, first of all, I'll understand the requirements and then look for the presentation tier that is handling the user interface interaction. So I will be using the Amazon services like Amazon code deploy and code pipeline, and the code build. So I'll create here the Amazon code pipeline by choosing a name for the pipeline, and and also selecting the service role, and then create a new one and add a source stage. I specify the code commit repository like GitHub or code commit, and also like S3 define the branch to the other monitor inside the application. So we can here go ahead and add the deploy stage. So after that, we can configure the deployment configuration for the consider using a load balancer and auto scaling group. We can also here add a deploy strategy to configuration and the deployment configurations. So as we can say, either deployment stage to the code pipe, and also here we can define specific tires and DynamoDB with appropriate the deployment. So we can also test and validate as a simple code changes by verifying the application functionality inside the code build, and also work on the infrastructure as a code, and also it works as a blueprint deployment. And we can actually outline the general deployment, once that is done, we can also work on creating instances with that code, and here so that with that code inside the code build, and also we can code deploy the agent. And after that is done, the code representation and the application deployment group can actually here uh, um, it actually the application deployment group. So at this high level, and how things are going to handling inside that, um, uh, so we can also work on the pipeline. We can define that in repositories inside the package. So we can also use automation inside the monitoring, and so we can also have a rollback plan in the case, so which is created in certain repository. So once the repository edited, then we can trigger that in the rollback.
Fantastic. Thank you. I see here, we're definitely looking at developing out an infrastructure as code strategy. I see, and one of the main tools is going to be Terraform. And can you tell me just a little bit about your Terraform experience? Do you have experience developing out Terraform code
Yes.
and modules? And can you kind of tell me some of the best practices that you used for your Terraform configurations and creating modules, or a little bit about that?
Yes, in the Terraform experience, I would like to say that I actually, created the templates and modules, developing the entire code in Terraform modules and set application. I also got a good experience and best practices on the department side. So working with containerization, the Terraform side of the configuration environment, and also come the services which is created within the customized module. I was also responsible for pushing these modules on the third party, integrating them with on your end time. Here I was also responsible for working on the custom templates and deployments which were created inside the amphibian, and promoting the application API. I got a good experience with the releases and using the multiple orchestration, and I was also work on this modules which are on using various provided to do that.
Okay, great. Can you kind of tell me how you manage Terraform state files and what strategies you use to ensure the state consistency between different environments?
Here we are using S3 bucket for the state consistency. So we are responsible for using, S3 bucket for the, state, we also ensuring the state locking at the S3 bucket and the deployment inside that. So we are also responsible for with the state locking to giving them on the SC environment. So once that is done, we can also trigger the state which it is across the multiple deployments in the insured API. So it's how.
Do you have any experience with? I see you have a lot of Kubernetes experience in EKS. Do you have experience with managing Kubernetes or EKS within AWS at all with Terraform?
Yes, I actually I was managing the EKS in AWS with Terraform. So I was like responsible for managing the deployments of the parts, and I also like got experience in communicating custom manifest files, trying to work on media to manage in a version of automate the application services in which the Terraform templates also working in the command line interface using Terraform CLI using Terraform. In this project, this Terraform creation using the main dot Terraform file for the content of is EKS cluster. I was also able to use the VPC triggers here and inside the application. I also used EKS resource allocation in the policy Aaron. And here I can also give a group name inside the error in the node, for the template inside the command line API, which is together and deploy at the top of that. So that's how I have managed the EKS in the AWS in Terraform.
Okay, fantastic. So it sounds like that you have a lot of experience, like with the deployment of EKS. Were you primarily managing EKS as a service itself, or more the deployments on top of EKS? Would you say, or
Um,
both?
Here, we were running the EKS service on the cloud side. So from the EKS service, we were also responsible for using EKS across a multiple application, and the use of EKS service, in the cloud deployments, and also in API which is prompted there. And also I call the experience here using EKS across a multiple application using EKS service in the cloud. Here in the cloud deployments API, which is promoted there, like
I,
you know
I, I guess what I'm asking, let me clarify a little bit. I mean, were you managing a lot of infrastructure? Like, on the cloud engineering team, we're going to be focused on managing a lot of the infrastructure with Terraform and infrastructure as code. So, deploying out EKS, deploying out service mesh and stuff like that. I mean, can you tell me like the differences between a managed node group and a self-managed node group in EKS?
Yeah, I was like managing, infrastructure as code inside that application. So we are also like managing the entire application infrastructure on the deployment side, and also like working to Terraform deployment, and also working on the deployment side with EKS trigger. So I was responsible for handling the custom services deploying, end-to-end applications in the data points, in managing endpoints with the self-managed node groups. And also I was like also responsible to handle the customized node points inside that. So yeah, managing infrastructure as a code inside the applications, like mostly I have done that in. in that things in that nature. So I have also run the Java application on top of that, and that should not be a problem at all. So also I was like able to do some rollbacks and on especially to say on application API. So yeah, things in that
Do you
nature.
have so you have do you have experience with creating API gateways with the Terraform node using within AWS?
Um, to say basically yes. I have used the Terraform by creating the Terraform with the Amazon Web Services and other responsibilities which are for using Terraform templates and and also for Amazon resources like load balancers, as well as the auto scaling groups are also using to launch configuration. So I was also responsible for using the teams. So once the resource was created and the load balancer inside, I was also responsible for having the auto scaling groups. um, and we were able to scale up and scale the applications and on the Amazon, and also launch the configuration across the systems, and yeah, things in that kind of nature. So
Okay, fantastic. You mentioned kind of load balancers. I just have one more question here.
yeah.
Could you tell me the different types of load balancers within AWS and kind of what the differences are between the different load balancers in AWS and benefits of them?
So we have got the application load balancers, and we also have got the classic load balancers in the application side. So we have got this load balancers, which will, the classic load balancers, which is like, added inside the application one time. And we also have got the classic load balancers, which we got the application as a, which added inside the application data. So these are ones which we use in our environment. So we also have the network load balancers, which are like the layer for the load balancers, which is added on the top of that. So these load balancers helps us to route the traffic from the outside world to the API, the callbacks inside that. So here we actually how we act, and also we have to check the health checks, which is we have to monitor that. And in the monitoring side of things, we also do this health check, that which will help us to counter the route of the traffic, and also make sure that we have the readiness of this health check inside that. So if we use them with the Kubernetes, we can use the readiness probe, and also the liveliness probe, like which can be added inside the monitoring departments.
All right, fantastic. That's all the questions I have.
Thank you.
And talking on mute. Yeah, what questions do you have for us quick? We got like less than a minute, but what do you want to know about FS that I didn't already go
I
through at the
would
beginning?
like to just generally know about the team culture and the workspace, like how the day-to-day activities. I mean, the responsibilities I will have to do.
Yeah, I mean
Yeah.
you're coming into a very formative space, right? So like, Chris has been here a couple weeks. He's the only cloud engineer we have right now, right? So it's like we're going to be hiring a lot of people. The goal by the end of the year is to maybe have a few building blocks out there, but mainly work on strategy, work on what we're going from greenfield to something that we can start introducing technology into the cloud, right? And that's there's going to be a lot of strategizing and working on those, surrounding governance items that we need to get in place before we can start moving applications. So that's going to be kind of the main goal. Even the 90-day goals would be like still a lot of strategizing, and maybe working on some of that ancillary governance stuff.
Got it. I'm good for now.
Cool. Yeah. So you should hear from us. We have a bunch of these half-hour calls. We have a few people we're talking to, but you should hear from us by the end of the week on it.
Okay.
Sound good?
Thank you. Awesome. Great.
Thank you for your time.
And
Thank you very
thank you
much.
for taking your time. And I'm sure I'm really excited that I will, look forward to join you. And thank you for giving me this time. And thank you for considering me. And thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thank
You'll
you.
definitely hear from us. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.